solution. I hadn't thought of that. Okay, got it. All right, so this past Sunday was the Sunday of the Food Sustainability Fair. That was my internship project for my pastoral internship, as well as for my part-time internship with EcoFaith. And the purpose, I've talked a little bit in the past here about how this came into being. Basically, the project was conceived through a series of one-on-ones with people, knowing that I wanted to do something in the arena of climate justice. And this congregation has a food pantry, a very busy food pantry. I think they serve something like 70,000 meals a year. And so Robin originally had suggested doing something at the intersection of food and climate because of this congregation's interest in feeding their community. So we started with that, and I did a series of one-on-ones with members of the congregation and the staff and some of you, and tried to kind of brainstorm what that would look like. And what quickly became apparent to me was there was a lot of interest, but it wasn't focused around one aspect. So there were everybody had different ideas and had a lot of enthusiasm for their idea. And so at the end of my one-on-ones, I was left kind of literally scratching my head and saying, what do I do with this? How on earth am I going to develop consensus around all these different ideas? And that was when I hit upon the idea of doing a fair type presentation where we could have multiple tables and be doing lots of different things and kind of something for everybody. So that was where the idea came into being for a food sustainability fair. And there originally were three areas that we wanted to address with the food sustainability fair. One was education, of course. We wanted to help educate the larger community and ourselves in the process about what is food sustainability, what does it mean? The second aspect was having some actions that we could take related to food justice, because there were people who were very passionate that our event needed to include concrete actions that people could take. And then the third arm was, having an element of fun in it to make it a fun event. And part of that was having some food. So I think you can't talk about food or have an event that's centered around food without having food. And so some of our vendors, were willing to bring food samples. And we did have different groups that brought food, for people to take home that was free and to share. And then we had a member of the congregation who is Spanish and loves to make paella. And so originally they were volunteered to make, a big thing of paella that I thought would be a draw for people. And then we lost them because it turned out that their child had a sports tournament last weekend, and they weren't able to come. And so that was one of many opportunities for me to scramble and say, how do we fill this gap? Because I was really kind of counting on that. Someone, I think my supervisor at the church, suggested food trucks. And so I did some searching online and to find food trucks that were sustainable, that offered sustainable food. There are not a lot, but I did find two. I found one in our area called Roly Rody, which is, they do serve meat, but it's all regeneratively farmed. So they're connected to restaurants that use only regeneratively farmed products. And so we invited them to come, and there was a dessert cart that's vegan and uses only, plant-based products and does like soy ice cream, popsicles, and things like that. So we invited both of them to come. So those were our three arms: were education, action, and fun. So the event kind of took on a life of its own. Robin had suggested that I probably the best suggestion I got along the way, which was to have a committee to help with the planning and the actual putting on of the event. It would not have occurred to me to do that on my own. At some point I would have asked for help because it was clearly too big of a thing for one person to do, but I'm very much a person who is used to just taking things on and doing them. And so it would not have occurred to me immediately to develop a committee, but it was invaluable. It was huge. So the way that I went about assembling a committee is I announced at church a few weeks in a row that what my project was and that I was going to be looking for help. And then I held an informational session one afternoon after church, brought pizzas and just explained to people what I was doing and the kinds of help that I was going to need, and was very gratified that I walked out of there with 9 volunteers. So it was very successful, I would say. And so we had a number of Zoom meetings early on. We had a Zoom meeting just to organize, and people did have suggestions about other groups to include or to invite to our fair. And then at one point, one of our volunteers is very active in our music ministry. He's the volunteer director of the bell choir, and he's our cantor, and he does a lot of music at the church. And he's also part of a band that plays for hire in the community. And so I just kind of threw out the idea that it would be really lovely to have some music. And I wasn't going to ask him because he already does so much, but he volunteered. But he said, well, you know, normally my band charges $1,000 for a gig. And he said, you know, I might be able to get them to accept half of that. And then he said, what's the budget for this event? I said, we have no budget. And so he went back to his bandmates and came back and said they're willing to do it at no charge, which was lovely because oh my gosh, it was wonderful music. Just, you know, very professional, lovely music. So, our event kind of grew. We invited some different people in the community who do work around food sustainability. We invited the sanitary district, has a speakers bureau, and we invited them to come and present composting and recycling and food waste issues. And then we had our own tables that we presented. We had the church's table, which was an educational table. So we had a poster about what is food sustainability. And then I had some short videos that were very entertaining that were running on a loop that talked about food sustainability issues. We had our 2 action tables. One was Bread for the World letter writing, offering of letters, which was really appropriate this year because it was all related to the Farm Bill provisions. So we had some informational stuff about the Farm Bill, and sustainability is definitely one of the issues in the Farm Bill this year. And so we were able to tie that in. And then we did a table that taught people how to use the Climate Action Now app on the phone, which, if you're not familiar, lets you take action, send letters to politicians, CEOs of company, whatever, really quickly. So they will tee up for you things on a daily basis for you to send, but there is a directory and you can go in and pick a category that interests you and focus on things under that category. And one of their categories is food justice. So, so we showed people how to download that app and use it. The director of that organization created a QR code for us to use for people to download the app that lists people as being under Faith Lutheran Church. So, so that over time we can see how many actions have been taken as a result of our event of signing people up for this app. So that was kind of cool. And then we also had a kids activity table. One of our members just volunteered. She wasn't even part of my committee, but she was my lay committee chair, and she volunteered to do a kids activity table. So she had a table making seed paper, which many people participated in, not just kids. And then we used that opportunity to advertise our Vacation Bible Day Camp that we're going to be having this summer as well. So, and then our food pantry had their own table where they were available if anybody wanted to, sign up to be a client of the food pantry or had questions. We had a couple other vendors. We had a vendor from East Bay Natural Grocers that came with some informational things and samples. We had a company called Farm Fresh to You that does locally grown produce deliveries on a subscription basis. And they offered to donate 10% of all sales back to the church. We had, there's a local group called Forester that works on food sustainability issues. They do gleaning. So they will come out and glean people's fruit from their trees, and they donate that all to food banks. They have a produce swap exchange within their organization, within their group. And they also do a lot of, they have seed exchanges, and they do a lot of teaching in the community around food sustainability and waste. And so one of the things that, oh, well, I guess I'm getting ahead of myself. So basically that was the makeup of the vendors, that was the presenters, what we had available. The event was partly indoor, partly outdoor. So we had half of the tables indoors inside of our church hall, and then half outside in the patio area. And it was a beautiful, beautiful day. We could not have asked for better weather. The temperature was like in the low to mid 70s, and people were really just enjoying sitting outside and listening to the music. Oh, I forgot a table. We had somebody who just contacted me out of the blue once we started advertising and said, I would like to, if you have room, I'd like to come demonstrate my tower garden. And she sent me a video. And so it's hydroponic gardening. I don't know if you're familiar with, but so she had a table demonstrating that as well. So we didn't have a way of really tracking how many folks we had. Everybody estimated that we had around 100 visitors. It was difficult to count because there were so many people just involved in the booths. That was hard always to know who was a visitor and who was attached to a booth. But we did have some good traffic coming through. We had good conversations. I think the best thing that came out of the event, besides the people who were there had a lot of fun, the food truck sold out of food. The dessert cart made his minimum guarantee, so that was all good stuff. We did advertise widely that the church board agreed to pay for a print ad in the local weekly newspaper that ran a kind of edited version of the beautiful flyer that Lee had made for us. So that was our only paid advertising, but we advertised on our website, on Facebook, on Nextdoor, on the other neighborhood site online. I forget the name of it. And then we had flyers made that were distributed widely. I distributed flyers throughout the neighborhood, the surrounding neighborhood of the church. We put flyers in all the food distribution bags at the Thursday night food giveaway at the food pantry the Thursday before the event. And then we had other groups that use our hall that, that had access to the flyers. so I think we did a fair amount of advertising and outreach. I think the event was successful. It would have been nice to have a little bit more foot traffic. I think one of the things that we did not, I mean, I have many takeaways for what I would do differently in the future. One of them is when we planned the event, we were really looking at the church calendar. And so we were looking at what else the church had going on. We wanted to do it after Easter, but before the kids got off for summer break, so families would not be going out of town. And that left a short window of time, and we didn't want to do it Memorial Day weekend. And, you know, so that kind of narrowed down the availability of dates. What we didn't realize was that last weekend was a weekend that a very large event happens in that area, which is the Castro Valley Rodeo, which is an annual event. And apparently it's a really big event in that area. Everybody goes to it. We did not know that until one of our members, you know, said, well, I won't be there. I'll be at the rodeo. I'm cooking for the Elks Club or whatever he was doing. So, I think that in future, I would move it off of that weekend. And that probably would have got us a little bit more foot traffic. But I think that a lot of really good networking happened. So even among the presenters, there was a lot of really good networking. Our food pantry got new donations from some of the vendors that were there. I offered our local ecumenical group if they wanted to staff one of our action tables. And so they sent a team of Baha'i youth to staff our Bread for the World letter writing table. So I thought that was really cool. And it was a really nice opportunity to have that kind of connection. But a lot of connections were made. I went around at the end of the event and asked, you know, each of the vendors, you know, was it a worthwhile expenditure of time for them? You know, was it worth their time? And every one of them said yes, and that they would do it again. So yeah, so the Farm Fresh to You folks got 10 new subscribers. And those, like I said, 10% of those subscription costs will come back to the church. The Forester Group hooked up with our food bank to do some ongoing donations. And they donated like a whole crate of cashew butter that someone had donated to them. So so lots and lots of really good connections were made through the event. And I just can't say enough about my volunteer team. I'm probably running over time. I apologize. But it was really a lot of work went into it. We had to do a lot of signage. We had to do a lot of setup and takedown and all of that. And people really came through and showed up. And there were people who put in, you know, probably at least 10 hours over the course of last week to make this thing happen. So it was really a wonderful experience. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that. Congratulations.
Thank you.
It sounds like you did a lot of learning and growing as a result of all phases of this, from your beginning with individual meetings, the planning process, and all the steps along the way. Congratulations. I think that was wonderful. And the lesson learned also is the value to the tablers of coming together in the same space at the same time. That there's you know, just underscores some of our principles about acting together, right? So really good. What I'd like to do is have a couple of comments now before, well, actually we should break up and go into our one-to-ones so that we can do that. And then we'll come back.
Peter, who have you not talked to in a while?
I'm sorry, what?
Peter, who have you not talked to in a while?
I'm not sure. Allison, maybe?
Okay. All right, Scott, who have you not talked to in a while?
Kelly,
Okay. All right, Chris, me and Michael, we're gonna be all together.
Sounds good. All right, so let's do it.